Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. I'm Steve Butler, and I'll be your host today. And with me, we're pleased to have Dr. Brent Simmermacher, who is our Chair of Sports Coaching, and Dr. Fred Cromartie, who is our Director of Doctoral Studies. As always, our wonderful producer, Sarah, is behind the camera. Sarah just got back from the Final Four. Thanks for the really cool Final Four hat that you gave me in the program.
Did you get a hat? I didn't get a hat either.
Well, you're not cool like me. Actually, you're not our boss like me. Anyway.
Oh, that's how it works.
Anyway, Sarah was working the Final Four, had a great experience as part of her mentorship and what she's doing here at the Academy. And we're grateful that our students are out there working hard in the real world. Today we're going to kind of wrap up the college basketball season. Monday night we had the men's championship game. Villanova beat North Carolina 77-74. And then last night we had the final game of the UConn Invitational, where UConn squeaked out a 82-51 victory over Syracuse. So let's start with the men's game. First of all, what was your immediate reaction to what happened in the game between North Carolina and Villanova? Fred? Outstanding game.
All the pundits called for North Carolina to win it, and Villanova it's sort of like, again, back in '85. They wanted Georgetown to win it so bad, they were going to run away with it, and it just didn't happen. So I think one of the greatest things out of it was at the end, Kenny Smith, disappointment, Charles Barkley dancing around the stage because it was an awesome finish. That's what college basketball is all about.
And what's really cool about Charles's excitement, it was just pure excitement because he picked North Carolina.
Yes, he did.
I mean, just the end of that game was so exciting to him that he just went crazy. What did you think, Brett?
The same thing. Probably between that game and North Carolina State, when Lorenzo Charles grabbed the ball out of midair in the last second and dunked it. And the story behind that is, when I was in college, we had a pool, and the final two teams were North Carolina State and UNLV, right?
Houston,
that's right. The Phi Slam Gem. Well, the ironic thing about that is my brother had Houston, because we drew out of a hat and you got so many teams. He had Houston, I had North Carolina State. And before the game, I said, if you win, we'll split the money. If I win, we'll split the money. No, not doing it. Because Houston was just supposed to blow them out.
Yeah.
Well, Houston put on one of the great performances of all time against Louisville.
Right.
And in fact, the game against Louisville in the semifinals was where the sports writer first called him Phi Slam Jam.
Yeah.
Darnell
He had 13 dunks.
So needless to say, NC State wins that game, and of course my brother comes, we're splitting that money. No, we're not. You would not do it. But that's what it kind of reminds me of. That's why you can't just listen to the experts. No. You got to play them.
You got to play the game.
I mean, look at how many of those experts picked Michigan State before the tournament even started.
Oh yeah.
They were all jumping on that bandwagon.
Sure.
Okay, raise your hand if after Marcus Page hit the shot, you thought the game was going to overtime. 3 out of 4.
4.7 seconds left, baby.
There's a lot of
4.7 seconds left.
You just knew that they were going to guard the line, or pick them up somewhere above the line, not let them get below the line.
For me, it was just
the play itself was
Page's play was
genius.
great. There's no question about it.
Oh yeah.
But it was just one of those things that you expected. If the game had ended there, it would have been fabulous and fantastic too.
Sure.
But there was time left, and I was just like, there's something greater. Didn't know what it was, but it turned out that it was greater. It's just one of those things. I mean, I was not worried. I'm just like, he got his timeout, got his timeout, and I'm like, he's going to do something. And boy, oh boy, didn't he do it.
Well, he drew up a perfect play.
Yeah.
And they executed it perfectly. They had the big guy.
But it wasn't a play that they just drew up right then. That was a play that they had in place all year long, and they finally went to option 2.
They were interviewing the big guy, number 23. He's the one that fell. He was the one that fell down. When Marcus Page did his shot, and he took the mop from the kid.
Yeah.
Because And he said, I wanted to make sure that spot was good and dry because I didn't want to slip, because that's the exact spot where I was going to set the pick. And then when they showed the play, that's the exact spot where he set the pick. And, the guy that threw the ball in bounds was Chris Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw the ball in bounds and just trailed, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that dude's name.
Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, the four years. He played like 140 something games for Villanova.
141 games in a row.
4-year starter. But the big guy set the pick at exactly the same spot. The guy stayed behind Ryan, and then when he got to he made the pass at the perfect time. And it was an uncontested 3 in rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And when Chris Jenkins gets that opportunity, it's going to
He's nailed it all year long. That's exactly what Coach Wright said. If he gets a shot in rhythm, it's going down, and that's exactly what happened. It went
Big
down.
Smooth.
Yeah.
Big Smooth.
That's a great nickname.
Yeah, it is.
And his mom taught him how to shoot.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. They were saying that she wouldn't let him shoot
Outside the key.
Outside the key. Yeah,
It'll
that's
be
exactly right. Yeah,
interesting
until
to
he was in
see.
8th grade.
It'll be interesting to see how many lower level coaches use that play from here forward.
Well, it was also a great story with the Jenkins kid, because remember, he was adopted by that family on the North Carolina side. So him and Bailey, or was it something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but I saw the story.
They're short. They're like brothers, And that was a great story because they were showing at the beginning of the game the Bailey family. Mom sat on the North Carolina side to start, and then she went to the Villanova side, and the parents switched. So they were supporting both kids. So that's another great story that you didn't really get until the end of the year and the final game, and it just turns out again that shows the wonderful things that happen in sport.
It's like the guy who's the girl that broke her foot for UConn?
Oh yeah,
I don't know what her name is.
Stevenson or Samuelson. So anyway, Samuelson. Her sister plays for Stanford.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was one game. There was one game in the tournament where both parents couldn't go. So mom went to Stanford, dad went to UConn, and they interviewed him in the game. And he pulled up his UConn hoodie and he had a Stanford shirt on underneath. So yeah, the parents give. We'll talk a little bit more about UConn in a minute. A couple interesting facts about the Villanova win. Villanova was the first team to beat 4 AP top 10 teams during the tournament since 1985. When guess who did it in 1985?
Villanova.
Yeah, it was also it was also the first time, or the Big East Conference is 6-0 in championship games. The only championship game the Big East Conference has ever lost was 85 Villanova Georgetown. Which, if you have 2 teams from the conference playing a championship game, by definition,
you don't lose.
One of them has to lose. But if you count that as a win, the Big East Conference is 6-0 in championship games. A lot of that by UConn, by the way. Brett mentioned this earlier, but it was the first time they had a buzzer beater in the championship game since 1983, when NC State beat Phi Slamma Jamma in Houston.
That was a 3-pointer.
Huh?
Buzzer beater.
Yeah, and also it was what many people are calling the best, one of the best championship games ever. I heard one. Who they were talking to one of the coaches. I can't remember who it was on the radio, and he called it a game for the ages. Oh, it was the coach. It was the coach of the Chicago Bulls, Fred Hoiberg.
Fred Hoiberg.
Who this is his first year in the pros. He just came from Iowa State, and I just happened to be driving last night during the Chicago Bulls pregame on ESPN radio, and he said it was a game for the ages. So that was the men's game. Both of the games were games for the ages for different reasons. One, because it was a classic game with an incredible finish. The other one,
I got to tell you this story though. Dan Brennan, KSJ Radio, his brother Jim is the sports psychologist for Villanova. So he's at the game. After the game, he's sending selfies of him and Jenkins to his brother. So yesterday morning they had him on the radio, and his brother Dan said, well, what'd you tell him? You were the reason they won the game. And he said, I told him there's no way you could have missed that shot. You were wide open.
That's the pure psychology. Well, the game last night.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. The game last night was a classic game for a totally different reason, and it's the sheer dominance of the UConn women's program. You know, they were the first women's team ever. You're gonna, in the next few days, you're gonna see a lot of comparisons between the UCLA men's teams from the 60s and 70s and the UConn thing that's
There
going
is
on.
no comparison. Freshmen could not play back then. Freshmen play now. There's no comparison.
There are some comparisons though, because they had they became the first women's program ever to win 4 championships in a row. UCLA won 7 in a row. The 3 seniors, Brianna Stewart, Mariah Jefferson, and Morgan Tuck became the first 4-time winners, which gets back to what you were talking about. I think we all believe very strongly that if Lou Alcindor, Mike Warren, Lucius Allen, Lynn Shackelford, if that group could have played as freshmen in '66, they probably would have been 4-time champions.
Yes.
But I would argue that it's a good thing that they couldn't play as freshmen, because we wouldn't have had the Texas Western story. If Lou Alcindor could have played as a freshman, no, we wouldn't have had the Texas Western story. Even if they would have played UCLA, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, because UCLA started 4 black guys.
Yes, I understand that, but there's still that possibility we could have still had it.
Nah, it wouldn't even been close. Anyway,
Let's see, were we saying anything about Immaculata when they won the first 3 women's championships in a row? They were dominant.
Yeah. And then then Louisiana Tech.
Louisiana Tech. So,
Tennessee.
I mean, again, it's a cyclical effort within sport where you have some teams that dominate, then it falls by, then you have some teams that pick themselves up again. So let's stop all of this. They're ruining it, or the coaches ruined it. It's this, it's that. No, it's none of that stuff. It's the simple fact of the matter is that you've got a coach that stepped into a program that was basically non-existent. He's turned it into a powerhouse. They've done everything that the school, the coach, and the program has asked them to do. Now it's the changing of the tide. Those players graduate. He's got new kids coming in. Let's see what he can do with the new talent.
But UConn doesn't.
They're reloading. There's no question.
They reload. They don't rebuild. That's the comparison. What you said about Gino Auriemma is another good comparison with John Wooden. You know, neither one of them won championships right away.
Exactly.
And you know, in a lot of ways, they might not have had the opportunity to do what they did in today's world, because nobody has the patience to let somebody not win right away.
Well, I can tell you, had John Wooden not been at UCLA, there's no question it would have not happened. It was a different climate at that time, and he was able to take, especially Lou Alcindor, to get him to leave and go west was a tremendous feat.
Yeah, New York
Tremendous.
City, Howard Memorial High School.
Yeah.
Some of the inevitable comparisons, of course, that was Coach Auriemma's 11th championship. John Wooden has 10. So if you want to look all time in basketball for all levels, he's now tied with Phil Jackson. With 11. We talked about the 3 seniors being the first 4-time winners, and obviously that wasn't possible in the UCLA days because freshmen couldn't play back then. There was one player, I can't remember if it was Larry Farmer or Larry Holyfield, who kind of overlapped the Alcindor Walton eras, and he still has the best winning percentage ever as a player, because he went 89-1 in his 3 years. Yeah, it's one of them 2 guys. Brianna Stewart also became the first 4-time most outstanding player of the Final Four, and we could probably make a fairly good assumption that that's another thing that Lou Alcindor may have done if he could have played as a freshman. You know, the first game ever in Pollock Pavilion, the UCLA freshman beat the defending national champion by 28 points. So that wasn't a bad team.
Well, and that was one of the things that they had last night, a conversation about after or near the end of the game, was in the annuals of looking at the great players of UConn, who is better in terms of overall performance, and that Diana Taurasi or Brianna Stewart, and they came that the announcers basically boiled it down to Diana Taurasi because she didn't have the supporting cast around around there and that. Well, that's all moot too.
Well,
I mean, you're talking two different players and basically different errors and how the game was set up and played based on how Coach Auriemma coached them.
Yeah, and the interesting thing last night was I remember exactly what you were talking about. One of them said Brianna Stewart, and the other one said Diana Taurasi, yes. Because basically it was kind of like when Danny Manning went with Kansas.
Yep.
Danny and four.
Yeah.
And I remember after the championship game back in the early 2000s when at the press conference they asked Gino Auriemma, well, what was the difference? He said, I had Diana and they didn't.
Exactly.
But at the end of the game, both of those announcers, Carol Lawson and Rebecca Lobo, both of them said that Brianna Stewart was now the greatest college basketball player ever. And I think that you know, if you look at all the things that she did, one of the things that shows the sheer dominance of this group of seniors, and how cool was it for that walk-on to come in and
oh yeah, but see, that's one of those posterized things where you get the picture of the score and her name is there and it shows the 3-point shot that she made, and that's a picture that goes up on her wall in her basement for all of prosperity for her and her family to live off of for years.
They even did a little special about her in the pregame.
Yes.
They talked about how she went to UConn on a track and field scholarship, and after their freshman year, Brianna Stewart sent out a tweet and said, we're looking for walk-ons because they didn't have enough bodies. And she walked on, and they said the first year she was horrible. And then now she's like, even though I think she scored 3 points this year before last night, but she's like a team leader.
Yeah,
her average was 0.3. So I think she actually scored like 21 points.
But yeah, that was a beautiful, beautiful scene. And the other part of it is too is that, you know, all of the girls were in on the celebration for all of the players. It was not that, you know, the situation where, oh, I'm a starter, I'm the one who's contributing. No, they were happy for each other.
Even the alumnus.
Yes.
Well, they went so crazy when that girl, I can't remember her name, Paulina somebody, number 2. Yeah. When she made that basket, Mariah Jefferson almost knocked the assistant coach over. I mean, she jumped up and plowed into her.
Her and Gino, man, giving the high five.
And then we'll get back on
like, it's not just them though, too. Is I liked on the other side when Syracuse was making a run, coming back, and you saw the previous player for Syracuse that were up and cheering, and everybody was just into it. That is what the game was all about. Everybody was into it, and it was really a beautiful thing to see.
Shows you a little bit about the dominance when you go on a 16-0 run to cut the deficit to 17 points.
Yeah.
I heard this on the radio this morning. UConn trailed for 1 minute and 42 seconds in the entire NCAA tournament.
Wow.
So, and the average score for their 6 games was 91-51. So they, a couple other things just throw out real quick because we're almost out of time. Those 3 seniors, well, 4 if you count the walk-on, they went 151-5 in their 4 years, but that was after they went 35-4 the first year. In the last 3 years, they're 116-1, and they're currently sitting at 75 games in a row. The longest winning streak ever is 90. Held by UConn, and this group of seniors was at the end of that winning streak as well. They weren't there for the whole thing, but they're there for the end of it. But yeah, you could probably get a pretty good Olympic team just of the players that were in the building last night.
Yeah,
with Maya Moore and Tina Charles and Sue Bird.
Yep. Well, I think one of the positive things that is coming out of this whole NCAA tournament for women's basketball is the fact that we had some newcomers that emerged.
Yeah.
Washington, Oregon State, Syracuse.
Well, you know,
those are programs that are not going away next year.
You talked earlier about, I think the only person that thinks UConn's running women's basketball is Dan Shaughnessy. I think everybody else in the world disagrees with him. I thought the Syracuse coach, by the way, is an alumnus of the United States Sports Academy. After they beat, who they beat in the semifinals?
Syracuse?
Yeah.
Washington.
After they beat Washington in the semifinals, during the press conference, they asked him about he said how proud he was of Gino Auriemma and his team. And Breanne Stewart actually went to his camp. She's from Syracuse. Actually went to his camp when she was like 12 years old. But he said, I just hope someday that we're bad for women's basketball.
Yes.
But that's the whole thing, and that's the point Gino Auriemma tried to make. It's not up to us to come down. It's up to everybody else to
rise up.
Exactly.
Get as good as we are and become better. And we talked about it last week with Coach
Mississippi State.
Coach Graves.
With Coach Graves from South Alabama. We talked about it last week, and we made the point that when Gino first was starting to get good, Tennessee was the big dog. So they rose their game up, and for a while there, UConn and Tennessee were going back and forth. UConn would win it 1 year, Tennessee would win it 2, UConn would win it 3, Tennessee would win it 1, and then finally UConn kind of pulled away. But there's, like you said, and
they
Kim
stopped playing each other too.
Yeah, Kim Mulkey made the point in her press conference after they lost in the regional final to Oregon State. She basically said that anybody that thinks UConn is bad for basketball is crazy. And she said, I was on a team. I was on Louisiana Tech when we were the dominant team. And she talked about what you said before: Immaculata, Louisiana Tech, Tennessee, now UConn, and there's a couple others in there. But one of the great points I heard about when they said UConn was bad for basketball, one of the commentators said, let's not forget, just 4 years ago, Baylor went 40-0.
Right. Exactly.
So you just got to get good. Well, we're kind of out of time. We're actually a little bit over, but we want to thank everybody. We hope your brackets don't look as bad as ours do at the end of the tournament. I did, due to tremendous skill, I did win some money in the Final Four. Those things where you have 100 boxes, you put your name in a box, and they randomly draw the numbers. I had in the North Carolina semifinal game. I actually had both of the numbers. That was skill and cunning on my part. But anyway, we hope everybody enjoyed the tournaments. Like we said earlier, both championship games are games for the ages for different reasons. The incredible excitement of the men's game and the incredible dominance in the women's game by the University of Connecticut. We hope everybody has a great week. Masters is this week. Baseball's in full swing. One of the great times of the year. College basketball tournament, baseball, and the Masters.
Final Four for hockey.
Yeah.
Yes, Frozen Four.
Frozen
Four.
They're the number 1 seed. Anyway, we hope everybody has a great week. Enjoy the Masters, and we'll see you next Wednesday morning at 11:30 Central Time right here from the United States Sports Academy. Have a great week in sports.